like to thank everybody who helped me put this together. Right? I am not a vessel unto myself. Everybody who I reached out and leaned into for support, I appreciate you. Let's get this thing started. Right off the bat, let's talk about this. There's a lot of questions about affinity. What is an affinity group? Who is a member of an affinity group? Why do we have it? An affinity group is defined as a gathering of people who share an important identifier, such as race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, first language, religion, or spiritual affiliation, national origin, immigrant status, developmental disability. An affinity space is only for people or those who directly belong to that specific group or identifier. It's not for anybody else. If you don't identify, it's not for you. That's okay. There's other places that are for you. Once at TAF, there's a lot of those places. But if you don't identify, you are not a member of that affinity group. An alliance is defined as a gathering of people who might or might not share one of those same identifiers. But you have a genuine interest, like sincere interest in the issues facing a particular identity group and who want to support it and want to serve as an ally. So you can be a member of an affinity space and an alliance group. But if you do not have an identifier, you cannot be part of an affinity space, whichever it is. Well, so Mr. Allen, you're talking about all this affinity stuff. I don't see the need for it. Why is it important? Provides a safe space for group members. It reduces feelings of isolation. Helps you embrace who you are. Helps group members feel more visible in the community. Our affinity spaces are critical to the Taft experience. It's vital to the feeling of acceptance, community, and belonging that we want, that we strive for in this space. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'd like for you to read this. This is our Taft Diversity and Inclusivity Statement. Specifically, pay attention to this. Intentionally diverse. And community members commit to affirm and honor the lived experiences of others. See, when you sign up to come to Taft, you sign up to do this. This is what you signed up for. Congratulations. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to take a closer look at some of our data, right? So a few weeks ago, Mr. Allen sent out a survey asking you some questions. And thank you to everybody who was able to participate. Got a lot of participation, got a lot of great information from everybody, as evidenced by our data. Do you know what an affinity group is? 81.5% of our community said, yes, I know what it is. 9%, maybe, I'm not really sure. 9% said, no, Mr. Allen, I have no idea what this is. And that's okay. Do you know what an alliance is? Again, an overwhelming number, 84%. Yes, I know what it is. 5%. No, I don't know what it is. 9%. I think maybe, possibly, I know what it is. I'm not really sure. I appreciate all of that. But if we took a deeper dive into the data that was collected, you would know that 60% of our community does not belong to an alliance or an affinity group. 9% of us aren't sure if they belong anywhere. 77% of us, all of us in this space, acknowledged that they do not have a close friend outside of one specific identifier, race. 77% of us. So I had some questions, things like those numbers didn't, like I just couldn't quite understand it, right? So in my mind, I thought, well, maybe there was some uncertainty around what an affinity and an alliance is. Maybe it wasn't clear. We weren't sure. Maybe the questions weren't really taken seriously. Maybe you just weren't in a space in that moment to answer the question in the intent that Mr. Allen had sent the survey out. Maybe you were thinking, hey, it's October and it's like 75 degrees outside, the sun is out, and I do not want to be sitting in wherever you were sitting having this survey. Maybe you had a big test. Maybe just life here at Taft just was more important at that moment. Maybe your identifier influenced your answer. Which identifier did you choose? You can have more than one. It's okay. Right, so on the next couple of slides, we're going to have some conversation. And these are genuine questions, but these are hard questions. You might have them, you might not. But as a reminder, I'd like for you to lean into them, right? Think critically about it. Doesn't dividing us up make things worse? Isn't self-segregation just as bad as imposed segregation? Mr. Allen, you're telling me that we need to be a community, but now you're telling me that there's spaces for specific people, right? That's like not the same thing. The idea that we self-segregate, right? The term segregation has negative connotations, right? You say segregation and it's a negative thing because it brings back times of social injustice. The idea of separate but equal is a concept that has never really come to fruition. It's created systemic and institutionalized oppression. But in reality, we commonly self-segregate. For example, fire drill. Who do you go stand with? When you go down to eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner, who are you spending the time eating with? Where do you eat? As an aside, self-segregation is somewhat a human desire, right? To spend time with people who have a shared experience, right? Maybe you're in the same math class, or maybe you have the same afternoon X, right? Maybe you're a member of an affinity group. Okay, Mr. Allen, well, That's all well and good. But don't affinity groups create resentment towards other groups? Affinity groups sometimes discuss shared challenges and struggles. It is true that affinity group members experience mistreatment. That's a fact. From members of other groups. At times, not all the time. Right? It'd be a gross generalization to say that if you are a member of X affinity group, that members from Y group always do something to you. That's a gross generalization. However, well-run affinity groups, like the ones that we have here at Taft, do a really good job of avoiding labels and avoiding blanket statements. I'm a member of a so-called privileged group, so I don't have an affinity space. Isn't that reverse discrimination? Let's just be clear. I am honest. Those of us with privilege, we are affirmed on a daily basis. If you're white, you don't have to look very far to see a role model, a protagonist, or a leader who looks like you. Able-bodied people rarely have to worry about how to enter a building. If you injured yourself at an afternoon X and you're on crutches and you live on 4, you have to think a little bit differently about how you're going to get to your room versus your roommate who did not have the same injury. Those of us who are comfortable with income, we're not concerned by thoughts about where our next meal is going to come from, where we're going to sleep. See, we don't consider these privileges because we're granted them almost all of the time. But there are those of us with identities that are rarely given those affirmations. Those of us in our own community here at Taft. In fact, they're told disparaging things about their groups. Wait, slow down, be patient, not right now. Or, I don't see the point of, why is this a thing? But Mr. Allen, we should be talking about like all of the things that we have in common, all of our similarities, rather than just the differences. I mean, doesn't talking about this stuff make it worse? No, it doesn't. Research on bias and prejudice and stereotypes show that we naturally tend to categorize, compare, create mental models. We internalize misinformation about groups of people right from an early age. However, what we do know, this is a fact. What does improve our attitudes is explicit conversation, talking about our differences, examining our attitudes, learning about oppression and privilege, rejecting false notions. These conversations are not easy and they're not comfortable, but they're necessary. They're necessary for growth. Okay, so shouldn't we be having dialogue all together rather than in separate groups? Often we engage in intercultural dialogue without examining our own identity, our own frames. And then we kind of get tripped up and stumble into some conflicts because somebody else doesn't see it the way that we see it. Conversations in well-run affinity groups allow us to examine the roots of why. Why do we see the world the way that we do? Allowing us to acknowledge that we may experience the world differently than someone else. And that's okay. It is this understanding that then creates a greater acceptance of other perspectives, allowing for impactful cross-cultural conversation. Don't affinity groups make students only hang out with people like them and not reach out? Groups naturally form out of a desire to connect. The difference is that in unstructured groups, there aren't any adult facilitators. This leads to stereotype reinforcement, group chauvinism, and other behaviors that mislead or alienate others. Affinity groups allow a designated space where students or faculty can explore, celebrate a shared identity, and debrief common challenges and experience group members of that identity face. All right, Mr. Allen. So now I get it. But aren't you just highlighting our differences? Wouldn't it be better to be colorblind? No. And no. Differences matter. While many of us, especially those of us from dominant cultures or privileged backgrounds, try to see past differences, the unintended effect is to deny others' experiences and silence the needs, concerns, and experiences of the marginalized members of our community. So where do we go? Which direction do we head in? Well, here's a list of some of our affinity groups and alliances that are on campus. There are more. I didn't have enough space to incorporate everybody. If you're interested in learning how you can be an ally, or if you're interested in figuring out which affinity space you can be a part of, come down and see me. By now, you should know where my office is. If you don't, it is across the hall from the girls' bathroom, right? Everybody saw that. I know. I get it. Come see me. Let's talk about where you fit, because there is a space for you here at Taft. To be an ally. To be an ally is to take on the struggle as your own. To stand up even when you feel scared. Transfer the benefits of your privilege to those who don't have it. Acknowledge that while you too feel pain, the conversation is not about you. See, here at Taft, we are committed to a shared mission, which is educating the whole student. We all have interests in multiple things, and interest does not mean identifier. It's okay to have identifiers in multiple spaces. That is the beauty of Taft. So, I'm an ally because. So earlier this morning, I sent out an email asking everybody to make sure that you bring something to write with. Oh my goodness. Unbelievable. Thank you. I appreciate you. Bonus points for those of you who are prepared. Everybody who's prepared is going to get an A+. Everybody else just gets a regular A. Okay, so this is what I need. This is what I need. This is what I need. Everybody should have a Post-it note. On your Post-it note, I need for you to write how, why you are an ally. How or why you are an ally. If you don't have a pen, pencil, something to write with, I'm sure someone near you has one. You can borrow it. When we adjourn, when we leave, right outside the choral room, there's a nice big banner that says, I am an ally. I need you to take your Post-it note, park it on the banner. Right? I need you to take your Post-it note, park it on the banner. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to kind of have some conversation. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, here we go. Here we go. My friends, lastly, the last time that I was up here, right, I did this thing. We are Taft. We are Taft, right? You are Taft. All of you, but all of you. Earlier we read the diversity and inclusivity statement. Taft is an intentionally diverse community. Every single one of us in this room makes that statement true. Every single one of you and every single identifier that you have. And in this community, in this space, there is a place for you. With others who share your identifier or identifiers. Find your space in either an alliance or an affinity. Move outside of the margins. See, you chose Taft because you wanted to be the best. You chose Taft because you wanted to grow. You chose Taft because of the experience that this place provides. You chose Taft because you committed yourself to pushing past your own comfort zones. The only way that you can have real growth is moving beyond where you already are. Now, I just got to be really clear and honest. This is not something that the adults expect you to do on your own because it's really hard. But in spaces such as affinity groups and alliances, we can help everyone embrace their Taft experience, and then Taft will be the best that it can be because of you. Let's embrace all of our shared experiences, regardless of your identifier. If you have a question about where you fit, come see me. We'll figure it out together. You are Taft. I cannot stress that enough. You are Taft. You belong, and there is a space for every single one of you. Go find it, be a part of it, move past your margins and your comfort zones. Thank you.